We're going to go over some important information for substitute teachers when you're working for the Boyle County School District. The first thing is confidentiality. It is unprofessional and illegal to disclose confidential information about students. You should avoid comments about individual students that convey private information, like grades, medical conditions, learning or discipline problems, and so on. Here's a short 4-minute video about FERPA, which stands for Family Rights, Education Rights, and Privacy Act.
Privacy Act, or FERPA, is a federal law which applies to educational institutions and agencies, such as schools, school districts, colleges, and universities, to which funds have been available under any program administered by the Secretary of Education. The purpose of FERPA is to protect the privacy of parents and students with regard to education records under Section 444 of the General Education Provisions Act as amended. Wow, it's easy to get confused with all that legal language. Let's try that again in plain English. The truth is, data about us is everywhere. It's collected when we shop, take a vacation, look at a web page, or send an email. You see, FERPA is a federal law that applies to most schools, colleges, and universities. It's meant to protect all that identifiable information about students in records that are kept by schools, and it provides the right for you to access that information, to seek to correct it, and generally to consent to its disclosure. Let's take a closer look at what that means. Today is Patrick's first day of kindergarten. As Patrick moves through the education system, his schools accumulate data, such as his grades, learning disabilities, or special needs information, and disciplinary information. As Patrick takes tests to see how he's progressing, his scores are protected by FERPA. FERPA requires schools and state and local educational agencies to keep the information that came from Patrick's records private and get his parents' written consent before sharing it with anyone else. There are some exceptions, but the general rule is Patrick's records are confidential. Students don't attend school anonymously, so schools routinely share some basic information about students, called directory information. If a school is going to share directory information, it must notify parents and students who are 18 or over, or who attend post-secondary institutions. For example, Patrick's school yearbook contains his name, grade level, and photograph. That's okay because his school designated these items as directory information and published its policy on its website, and Patrick's parents haven't opted out. FERPA also requires schools provide Patrick's parents the ability to review his records to make sure they are accurate. Patrick's applying to college. He and his parents review his high school transcript and discover the school has gotten Patrick confused with another student who has lower grades. This isn't good. FERPA not only gives his parents the right to see the records, but also to request that the school correct mistakes. If Patrick's parents and the school disagree on the accuracy of the info, FERPA gives Patrick's parents the right to request a hearing. Colleges and universities are also required to protect student information under FERPA, but the rules change a bit. Meet Lisa, a high school graduate who is headed off to college. Hooray! While Lisa was in elementary, middle, and high school and under the age of 18, FERPA allowed her parents access to her education records. Now, Lisa is entering college, and her FERPA rights transfer from her parents to her. Her parents wonder, but wait a minute, I'm paying the bills here, and now I can't see how she's doing academically? Since Lisa's parents claim her as a dependent on their federal tax return, her parents can still see her education records if Lisa's college chooses to release them. FERPA doesn't require schools to release records, it only allows this. You may be wondering, how do I find out more about how FERPA affects me or my child? To start, look for your school or school district's FERPA policy on its website, or ask your principal or school administrative staff about your rights under FERPA. Visit the Department of Education's Family Policy Compliance Office website for answers to frequently asked questions on privacy, training, and guidance for parents and students on FERPA rights and protections.
All right then, so back to the slideshow. Next, we have some more information on confidentiality. Do not gossip or discuss incidents about classes or students. This applies in the teacher's lounge, at school, and also when you're in the community. Please ask advice of school personnel about how to deal with certain students or classes, but do not let the conversation develop into one of complaining, ridiculing, or spreading rumors about students or staff. I know this is common sense, but it sometimes is important just to be reminded. Harassment. We have harassment and discrimination policies for students and for employees. You, as a substitute teacher, you are considered to be an employee of Bull County Schools. And so this policy actually can be written, it is the same for students and for staff. Harassment, discrimination of employees or students is unlawful behavior based on the race, color, national origin, age, religion, sex, genetic information, or disability of an employee or student, involving intimidation by threats of or actual physical violence, the creation by whatsoever means of a climate of hostility or intimidation, or the use of language, conduct, or symbols in such manner as to be commonly understood to convey hatred or prejudice. If you believe you are being harassed by a student or a staff member of Bull County Schools, please report this to the building principal. Also, if you were to observe someone else being harassed or discriminated against while you are substitute teaching, please let the building principal know this as well. Bloodborne pathogens. They are viruses, bacteria, and other microorganisms that are carried in the bloodstream and can cause disease. The most common bloodborne pathogens are HIV, hepatitis B virus, and hepatitis C virus. People may be symptom-free, so we need to treat all people as if they might have a bloodborne pathogen. If a student or staff member comes in contact with blood or other potentially infectious materials, such as human bodily fluids, it is crucial to put a barrier between yourself and that person. The single best way to create a barrier is to wear medical gloves when assisting the person. Wash your hands after removing the gloves and do not reuse the gloves. Always request custodial assistance in cleaning up blood or other bodily fluids. If you are exposed to the blood or bodily fluid of another person while you're substitute teaching, inform the school nurse. We're going to watch a video again. This one is on bloodborne pathogens. And looks like we have a short ad. Hang on. There we go. Okay.
According to OSHA, approximately 5.6 million workers in healthcare and other facilities are at risk of exposure to bloodborne pathogens such as HIV, hepatitis B, and hepatitis C. Employers are required to adhere to all OSHA standards and provide training to employees that could be exposed to bloodborne pathogens. Employees are required to take the bloodborne pathogen training and follow all procedures related to the handling of potentially infectious materials. OSHA's bloodborne pathogen standard prescribes safeguards to protect workers against the health hazards from exposure to blood and other potentially infectious materials, and to reduce their risk from this exposure. All employees who may face contact with blood and other potentially infectious materials while performing the duties of their job are covered by the bloodborne pathogens standard. Good Samaritan acts, such as assisting a coworker with a nosebleed, would not be considered occupational exposure. Exposure can occur as the result of a needle stick, a cut from a sharp object, or contact of mucous membranes, for example, the eye, nose, mouth, or broken skin with contaminated blood. Treat all human blood and body fluids as if they are infectious. Here are some examples of bloodborne pathogens that you should be familiar with. Hepatitis B is a disease that attacks the liver. The disease can be prevented by a hepatitis B vaccine. Symptoms include fatigue, stomach pain, nausea, loss of appetite, jaundice, and darkened urine, though sometimes the disease doesn't present any symptoms. Hepatitis C is also a disease that attacks the liver. However, the disease cannot be prevented by vaccine. Signs and symptoms of the disease include fatigue, weight loss, nausea, and depression. The majority of people don't have any symptoms. HIV is the virus that causes AIDS. When a person has HIV, it means that the HIV virus is in his or her body. Over 1 million people are living with HIV in the United States. When a person has AIDS, it means HIV has made it so the body cannot fight off infections. Since AIDS is an advanced form of an HIV infection, everyone who has AIDS also has HIV. Symptoms can include fever, chills, rash, night sweats, muscle aches, fatigue, and swollen lymph nodes. If you are exposed to potentially infectious materials, wash the exposed area with soap and water. Splash your nose, mouth, or skin with water. Irrigate your eyes with water or saline. Report the exposure to a supervisor. If another worker comes into contact with infectious materials, direct the worker to a healthcare professional immediately. Specialized clothing or equipment worn by an employee for protection against infectious materials must be properly cleaned, laundered, repaired, and disposed of at no cost to employees. Handle contaminated laundry as little as possible and use personal protective equipment. Laundry must be bagged or containerized at location where used, and must be placed and transported in labeled or color-coded containers. Contaminated work surfaces must be decontaminated with an appropriate disinfectant. Biohazard warning labels are required on containers of regulated waste, refrigerators and freezers containing blood and other potentially infectious materials, and other containers used to store, transport, or ship blood or other potentially infectious materials. In summary, OSHA's bloodborne pathogens standard prescribes safeguards to protect workers against the health hazards from exposure to blood and other potentially infectious materials, and to reduce their risk from this exposure. Implementation of this standard will help prevent hepatitis B cases and significantly reduce the risk of workers contracting AIDS, hepatitis C, or other bloodborne diseases. This has been a production of Federal Safety Solutions. For more information, please visit fssamerica.com.
Okie doke. So, again, back to our slides. Remember, protect yourself from exposure to blood using gloves or by not touching the fluid at all. Call for a custodian and, if necessary, also for the nurse. Bull County Schools emergency procedures. We have emergency backpacks in every room, every classroom for sure. If you change rooms during the day as a substitute teacher, the backpack stays in the room. It is only taken out of the rooms during drills and actual emergencies, or if you happen to be going on a field trip with your class that day. There should be an updated roster in your emergency backpack. These are typically located near the classroom door, either on the back of the door or on the wall beside the door on a hook. Your backpack should also have inside of it a universal procedure card, a person accountability form to fill out during lockdowns and evacuations, and a red card that's been laminated that you will put in your exterior window of your classroom only in a real emergency if you have someone in the room that has a life-threatening medical condition. Be familiar with the 6 universal procedures that are on the card in your backpack. These procedures are evacuation, when conditions are safer outside than inside, so you will be leaving the building with your students. Reverse evacuation, when conditions inside the building are safer than outside of the building. This might be used if you have a strange dog or a person on campus that you're not sure why they're there. You might come into the building. Severe weather, shelter in place. This would be used for an external gas or chemical release. Lockdowns, or drop, cover, and hold, which is what we use during earthquakes or other imminent danger to the building structure. What we do in our drills is what we do in emergencies, so practicing correctly is very important. There are a lot of drills during the first month of school per legislation. We have 2 fire drills during the first 2 weeks of school and then 1 every month after that. We have a lockdown drill the first 30 days of school and a second lockdown drill in January. We have severe weather drills within the first 30 days and then again in January, February, March, and April. And we have an earthquake drill the first 30 days of school, then another one in January. In particular, with lockdowns, when the announcement is made to lock down, the first thing you need to do is to make sure that the door to your classroom is closed and locked. If you don't hear commotion and you want to look out the door if it's already closed and locked to see if there are any students that need to be cleared from the halls immediately, you can let students come straight into your room. But if you hear commotion or your door is already locked and closed and you do not want to open it, that is okay. Assist people with who need special assistance that are in your room. Make sure again that the doors are closed and locked. And I would suggest that when you begin subbing at the very beginning of the day, if you've not been given a classroom key, that you make sure that your door is already automatically locked and closed from the outside. If you do have a key, I would encourage you to immediately lock it from the outside so that it is locked and you know that it is. Stay away from all the doors and windows. Make sure the windows are also covered. Move students to interior walls and sit on the floor. You also need to sit down on the floor with the students. Make sure the lights are off and that everyone is quiet. Our students have been doing lockdown drills for a long time now, and they typically are very, very good during the drills, very, very quiet. So they know the expectation is that they should be very, very quiet. As soon as the drill is over, put the person accountability form that was in your classroom emergency bag back into the bag where it was originally located and wait for further instructions. If it is a real lockdown, not a drill, and you have a life-threatening medical emergency in your classroom, like I said a second ago, there is a red laminated card in your backpack that says immediate help is needed. You will put that in the corner of your far left exterior classroom window. These instructions are on the card, so all you need to do is to know to look for the card. The person accountability form is in everyone's backpack. This is where you will write down the names of all the people, the extra students who may have come in your room, and other people that were in the hallway that are currently in your room, including yourself. Do not list anyone that's not physically present in the room. Some teachers choose to attach the roster to this form rather than having this filled out, but you need to make sure that there's some kind of a check mark that shows who was in the room and an X by any students or people whose names are on the rosters that are not in the room. They could have left the room to use the restroom, or they could have been absent that day. And then if you do have any extra people that are not on the roster that are in your room, that you add those people's names to the bottom of the roster. So you can either use this blank person accountability form that's in your backpack or the roster in your backpack to make sure you get a very accurate account of who is in the room with you during the lockdown. In every substitute teacher folder There's supposed to be this yellow emergency response subsheet that you see on the left side of the screen. This gives you information about the classroom you're in. It lets you know how you can get the front office, the principal, and the counselor using the 4-digit extensions to get into their rooms from your classroom's phone. There's a reminder that if you needed to dial 911 from the classroom's phone, you first need to dial a 9 and then 911. It also reminds you about your emergency bag. It informs you about the different alert messages you could have for different drills or different kinds of emergencies. It also reminds you at the very bottom right here a little bit more about a lockdown. So this is something that should be available to you in your substitute teacher folder as a reference for you when you substitute teach. A new law requires all rooms to have primary and secondary evacuation routes posted, along with that room's severe weather location that's indicated on it. In each of our classrooms, right by the classroom door, you should have a map of the classroom or of the actual school. Your primary exit route when you evacuate will be in red. Your secondary exit route will be in blue. And where you are to put that class during severe weather will be indicated in green on the map. Again, the map is beside the classroom door. Senate Bill 8 recommends that all classroom doors be locked during instruction if the door can be locked from the outside and opened from the inside without a key. If you see a visitor in the building without a visitor's badge or sticker, either escort the person to the office to properly check in or call the front office to report that there is a visitor without identification in the building. Keep all exterior doors locked during the school day. Don't prop them open. When in doubt, send drawings or writings of concern to your guidance counselor as soon as possible. Please do not wait until the end of the day and go up with it and say, oh, this happened during second period, and I think you need to know. Because an alert paper needs to be investigated by the counselor as soon as possible. An alert paper is any paper that leads the reader to suspect that the writer or someone else may be in a life-threatening or harmful situation. If you're not sure, always err on the side of being cautious and turn in a paper so that the counselor can make the judgment. Sometimes there's more to the story than you will know based on what you see or read, and so the counselor may have more information that makes something that you're not sure about become more relevant. Threats. All threats are not created equal. Some are much more serious than others. We have a very specific protocol that we use to assess the seriousness of threats. Your principal, assistant principal, and or your guidance counselor can assist you in determining if a threat needs further evaluation. Again, the important thing here is if you're not sure, it's better to err by reporting something unnecessarily than by not reporting something that should have been reported. And the sooner that you can let someone know, the better, because it may take time to investigate the situation. Suspected child abuse must be reported per law. The person who directly sees or hears the alleged abuse is the person who should immediately make the report. Immediately see your building's guidance counselor for assistance if you suspect abuse of a student. The principal is also required to report the suspected abuse. So again, this is another situation like alert papers and threats. If you suspect that abuse has occurred, you need to immediately let the guidance counselor and principal know. Student discipline. Student disciplinary measures should not be administered in a manner that is humiliating, degrading, or unduly severe, or in a manner that would cause the pupil to lose status before his or her peer group. Teachers should guard against making remarks to other pupils concerning a student's shortcomings. One of the best things that you can do if you need to discipline a student is to do it quietly and privately. When students are disciplined publicly in front of their peers, they often feel like they need to backtalk or come back at you in some way, because in order to save face in front of their peers, they can't show that they're going to comply with you. Preventing escalation by promoting positive behavior. Notice when a challenging student is doing well and give him or her specific feedback. Catch these students being good. Be specific about what they're doing or saying that you like. Use a quiet voice. Be brief. Don't wait for them to respond to you or even expect a response from them. Give them a compliment, give them positive feedback, and then walk away. For every negative interaction that we have with a student, it is best practice to give that student a minimum of 4 positive interactions. We want to deposit more than we withdraw in our relationships with these students. So be aware of that.